Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Coding on Swiboe, the next generation text editor. Top of the show business today. Very little. One thing that I wanted to point out is Swiboe reached 100 stars yesterday, which is really nice. I think it took Altisnips a year or something to reach that, and Swiboe made it in like little more than 4 weeks, which is pretty amazing given that you cannot use it for anything right now. Uh, I take it as a vote of confidence, and I'm really grateful for that. And one more thing is I talked about this pull request yesterday, I think, where I changed the client to not use MyO anymore, instead do blocking IO. And actually 6D65 reviewed that for us, which I'm honored. Like the dude himself came by and reviewed our code. So thank you very much. Though I think I found a bug in the code. I'm not quite sure yet. It is either a bug in the new code or the new code triggers a bug in the server, which seems more likely right now. But there can be deadlocks in this implementation, and I have to investigate a little bit more to figure out what's going wrong there. Okay, let's get started. We were working on testing yesterday. Specifically, we wanted to wire up the Python testing so that it is straightforward and easy to understand. And what we did yesterday is we implemented a test server, which we bring up for each test. So basically, before the test, we bring up the test server. The test server creates a temporary directory, and in this directory creates an underscore socket file on which it listens. And this is then the directory or the connection that we can actually use for connecting in our individual test to test the library itself. That is already, I think, a good step in the right direction. There are two things that I would like to address today. I'm not sure if we can get to both of them because one of them might be a big refactoring, or like a rather big refactoring. So the first one is that we have to so in our Python code, in the where's it, Swiboe.py actually, we start out by, of course, loading our shared library, our C ABI library that we have been programming in the last few streams. And this is the one that we then call through Python, right? So here are all the functions that are defined in this library, and we just call them directly as if they were C functions, which in some sense they are, right? It's the ABI that is defining if it is a C function or not. And to override where the library is located, for example, for testing, where it is not installed in a system-wide directory where the linker can find it, we actually have to provide the full path to it. And right now, what we're doing for that is we're using a environment variable. And for production code, that it's actually pretty good, I think. So if you would like to run Swiboe in production and you would like to override which Swiboe library is going to be used, there should be an environment variable that is read. But for testing, it's a little inconvenient. For testing, we would actually like to pass that as a command line flag to the test runner, so that we, for example, can test against the debug and the release binary with very similar looking command lines. And it's also self-documenting, while this is rather like obscurely hidden. The problem with that, though, is if I would like to make it a command line flag, actually we need to somehow pass it around here before we run unit test main. And then we would need to pass it somehow to this file so that this file is loading the correct library. Unfortunately, this file is sourced already here, right? We import it here, and so this code is executed at this point in time. At this point in time, we didn't even run this code down here that could have access to the command line flags. And therefore, this code will always use the environment variable. And I'm not actually sure how to go about it. I think probably the correct solution is to turn our library here into some sort of a wrapper class that has a library, a function that allows you to override which library name was actually loaded. And I'm also not sure if that is really wonderful, but let's go about it. So basically what I would like is I would like to have a class, and this class is of course called Swiboe. Why not? And this is think about all of this stuff later. Basically what I would like to have is something like you can pass it a library, or like shared library, or yeah, why not shared library, and that is by default none. And this code then moves inside of that. Basically, we can say something like if shared library is none, then we say shared library is actually US getinf, right? And then it could still be that it's none, and then we use the system library, something like that, right? And now we actually have to keep this handle somehow. And the problem about this, though, is that there is no safety net. We can instantiate many of those Swiboe libraries, and they will all just try to reload the library, which is not what we want. So basically what we would like to have is some sort of a static member, something like library or something, right? And that is none at the very beginning. And then we can do something like if, let's pull it out and say we have a function that we call load shared library, something like this. And that takes also the shared library path. Now we pull all of this down in this function here, and we return the loaded library, something like that. And then we can say something like if Swiboe library is none, then we will actually set it, right? We will say Swiboe library is then load shared library. And that's much better. The only thing that's a little sucky about that is if we, like imagine we call this, like we create a Swiboe object like so, and then later in the code we try to load a specific shared library, then this will not work and it will actually fail silently, which is of course also not great, right? So we could actually maybe also keep around the shared library argument, maybe something like library loading argument, like so. And then we say if Swiboe library is none, then we actually load that, and we also set the library loading argument to shared library, something like this. If Swiboe library is already something, then we actually check else if elif, it's in Python. We actually check that the loading argument is the same as the one we get right now. Otherwise, we raise a runtime exception and say Swiboe initialized with different arguments was this is now this, something like that. And was is then Swiboe library loading argument and shared library. Boom. Let's run PyFormat over this code to make it look a little nicer. Well, that didn't work at all. Why not? What did I mess up? Line too long? Undefined variable runtime exception. Really? How's that called in Python? Isn't that called a runtime exception? Built-in exceptions. That sounds like what we want. So we have a base exception, we have a standard exception, we have an environment, no attribute error. Sounds interesting. Key error, memory error, name error, OS error, reference error. Here, runtime error. It's just not called exception, it is called error. So there we go. Yes, this line is too long. And why is PyFormat not fixing that? Just doesn't feel like it. Great. Okay. Am I short a closing brace? No, I'm not. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, PyFormat is supposed to fix that, but yeah, it doesn't. Okay, so what? And okay, so basically what I'm saying now is we have a Swiboe object, which we should probably call Swiboe library, because that is what it is. And then this code actually goes away, though this to-do is still correct. And now, what about all of these thingies here? I think they are still needed, but actually probably we can just move them in here, right? We can say something like, okay, this is our library, and once we have this library, we can set all the parameters on it, and then we return it here, like so. Okay. Is that now better though? Who knows, right? Really hard to say. Because now our test changes, right? Instead of from Swiboe import library, we actually now import here Swiboe library, like so. And then here we say, well, we have our library in each test, and that is a Swiboe library, like so, right? And then we can pass the tests to this particular instance here. One thing that's still like a problem is that we of course now expose this function, this object, but those functions are all defined on this particular object, which is a static function, like a static member of the Swiboe library class. So we have to somehow forward every call that is made to this object to its contained object, and that's also really not nice. So we basically would like to have some sort of proxy class. This should be a proxy class for this one. I don't know. I don't feel that's much better. I don't feel that's much better. Well, let's troop on with that. So essentially what we need to do is we need to forward a couple of thingies. So something like we probably have to override either the get attribute or the get attree function, which I never understand the differences. So basically we have something like get here we have those two functions, and I don't understand what the difference is there. Called when an attribute lookup has not found the attribute in the usual places. Okay. And what is get attribute? Called unconditionally to implement attribute access for instances of the class. If the class also defines get attribute, the latter will not be called. Okay, so we probably want to override this one then. Basically, we can say here that def get attribute self name. That is actually the same as calling Swiboe library get attribute name, something like that, right? Undefined variable Swiboe library, and that is true because that should be camel case, like so. And now I think we should actually be good. If I save this now again, then this is happy. And actually we can just do that in the setup. We just say we have here self library. And then wherever we are using library, we can just use self library. Okay, so we cannot put everything in here. We actually have a bunch of public types. For example, RPC is a public type, which we have to have here. And then we just hoist up all the types, I'd say. So this is going here, and C void pointer, everything that's a C void pointer essentially goes up there. Okay. And now, saving, all the errors are gone. So if we run that now, it should still work, but Swiboe library, that's correct, because we cannot compare with is. We actually have to say, here, down here, we actually have to say is, right? Now, actually, is that true? Swiboe library initialized with different arguments. Was none, is none. None is not comparing equal to none. Is that true? That seems arbitrary. So none equals to none is true. Oh, Jesus. Should be not equal to, right? That's what we want. And, oh, we forgot a return statement. Too much Rust. I'm already used to not needing return statements. And now we run it, and we get a segmentation fault. So, that's not quite working the way I was hoping it would. So let's make our test simpler then. We comment out all tests except for the very simple one, and then we see if that passes. Because theoretically that should work. I wouldn't understand why it should not work. But apparently it does not quite work. So let's add some tracing. Report it we see 4 alives, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Let's add some numbers to them there so that they're easier to distinguish. And over here too, we add something like this, maybe. So it is actually dying in the Swiboe disconnect call. That is fascinating. Why is it dying there? It seems like it should work, right? We get back a client here, and then we pass this client on to the disconnect. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something in how C-types work. Let's make sure that Swiboe library is actually loaded and correct. It is. Maybe I didn't rebuild. Nope, that doesn't seem to be the problem either. Oh, apparently I didn't rebuild. But it did run before, so that is very unlikely to be the problem. Yeah, that is not the problem. Yeah, I wasn't sure B52. B52 just wrote in our Gitter chat room that he found none equals none to be awesome. But I mean, there are languages where they don't compare equal, right? Where something like not defined or null is actually always comparing false. And I didn't write Python in a while, so I wasn't sure. Okay, so I don't understand why this is crashing. Does anybody see why this is crashing? I mean, it seems perfectly reasonable, right? We load the shared library, and we also succeed in loading the shared library here. And then we set all those types as we did before. And then we are unloading the, we actually just call through to this shared library. So all of this actually seems perfectly reasonable to me. But apparently it is not working. Really, really fascinating. What happens if I say, well, library is now load shared library, just like that, and then we don't instantiate actually the shared library ourselves. Instead, we use the library object again, the one that we actually load from Swiboe. Load shared library, and we say none. Fascinating. Isn't that fascinating? Why is that working and it's not working if it is a shared object? I'm actually misunderstanding how shared attributes work in Python. Is that if I set this here, is that only set for the particular class only once? That seems very unlikely though. And even then it should just work, right? Fascinating. Okay, what happens if I remove this again and we undo this over here, and then we say actually reload the library and we use the library, but instead of using the proxying, we use the library object directly. Like so. That works too. Really? But if we proxy it like that, it doesn't work. That's crazy. I mean, what could possibly go wrong here? All we do is we ask for an attribute and we pass this call on to an object and then we return that. Why is it so unhappy about that? That makes no sense. So what happens if we use get attribute instead? That works. Crazy. Crazy people. Oh well, who am I to complain? Python is Python is Python. Using underscore get attribute actually crashes. So my theory why this is the case is that maybe ctypes does some magic. I don't know, like this library object is probably, so what I'm saying is here we get a object back that is created by ctypes, and that's probably not a Python class, like a pure Python class, it's probably some C class, and maybe for C class there are other rules, right? I don't know, maybe it's even a bug in Python that it expects that it calls get attribute on a Python object that it cannot deal with get attribute returned, get attribute by a C object. I don't know, but I mean, I'm fine with that. We can totally live with that, right? That works too. So let's remove the alives over here too. And then we bring back the tests. Two tests. Let's see if that crashes actually. Nope, works. Great. And three tests. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, and now what we need is some argument passing and some like actually not calling unit test main but setting up our own test runner. And for that I'm actually going to steal from Altisnips because that's all very ugly. And I figured it out once, so I don't have to figure it out again. So yeah, something like that, right? We need to pass arguments, and for that we don't use op-pass because that is all deprecated and ugly. So I think I have actually a snippet for that. Args here. This is the test runner for the Python interface. Also tests the full C ABI. And we want one argument, and that is actually, we don't want short arguments. Can I just leave that out like that and say we would like to have shared underscore library, and that the type for that is actually a string, and the default is none, and help is the shared library that will be loaded by ctypes for testing, right? And then we pass the arguments and we return that. And here we start out with parse args like that. And we move this to the top. And you know what? Let's comment this one out. I still want to keep it around because I want to construct a streaming RPC test and that will be basically copy and pasting from this function. So let's leave it in there but comment it out, and we make a new main function that is actually looking very much like this. And very close now, very close. So we pass the arguments, and then back to altisnips. We actually would like to something like this, right? We would like to have a test loader like so, a test loader, oops, and a test suite, I think suite, right? And down here we just run it. And of course we also have to somehow signal success, like so. And down here we exit with the correct error code. And I think we're already nearly there. Verbosity for now is 0, but we will eventually add .v flag. Fail fast. I don't know what this is. False. That's probably if it should run all tests or stop if one of the tests fails. And successful. Do you actually write successful with 2F at the end? I'm not sure. I don't think so. Yes. Wrong. This is written like this. Okay. What happens if I run now the test runner -- help? Wonderful. We're now getting the shared library, but of course we also have to set it somehow. And the only way I know of setting some option that is true for all tests is to actually set it in the in our test case. So basically we have something like Swiboe client low level. That's our test case class, and we set a shared library here, and that is args shared library, like so. I'm not quite sure about argparse if that works this way or not. Let me just test that real quick. Shared library, like so. Shared library is foo. Yes, that works like that. Great. Okay, and here we say the shared library is none, and while we are on it, we can also say test server is also none, and then we make test server also a object, a argument. And basically we say p add argument, not group, argument please, and that is the test server. Type is string, but actually here we would like to have a default, right? We just use the debug test server, and our help is the test server binary that is used. The test server binary. Nice. And here we do the same for the test server. Test server. And now we can actually here we can just use test Swiboe client low level test server, not test server. That is actually the shared library, like so. And what else? Where's the test server actually brought up? That is here. So here that is test Swiboe client low level test server, right? And now this should actually run. If we remove that, it should fail, right? Oh, it's failing. It's always failing right now because our test discovery is not working. So we are not starting in the test directory, we actually start here. And the shared library is, why is it, what? Oh, because I passed it. So we don't pass it and it still is not finding any tests. That is too bad. That is really, really not great. What happens if I remove this? Oh, something else is missing. Something else here is missing because we actually have to do something with that, right? What is flatten test suite doing? Oh wow. Okay, so we need this 2, and then here actually, okay. Basically, we actually do it differently. Instead of setting it for the top level class, we set it for each individual test. So apparently this is not working the way I was hoping it would. But then we just say, well, we just set it like that. Test server is options test server. This is all going away. All other plugins, we don't need that. And this is actually how we can select tests. That might be useful eventually, but for now we just keep all of the tests. And then we have this tests thingy, which is just a set. Okay. So tests is a set. And we're getting there. Options is not defined because I called it args. Yeah, I don't know. Options is just as well, I think. Well, actually I like args better, right? It's the command line arguments, not the command line options. I guess it's the options too. Oh well, who knows. Okay. Now we have a very different error, which is great. None type object has no attribute rfind, it says here. So, actually in here we can now use self. Ah, wonderful. And now it's actually complaining that it cannot find the shared library, and that's exactly what we want. So if we now go back and provide it through the environment, it should work. Yes, but it should now also work if we actually say shared library is target debug lib Swiboe. Great. And of course, also if we say release lib Swiboe. Wonderful. So it's now working like this, and the same goes for the test server. We can also say, well, the test server, actually we would like to use the release test server, or we would like to use the debug test server, right? Great. So we did this. We made Swiboe library possible on the command line. That works. And we also bring up all the Swiboe server. We bring up the Swiboe server for each test, so that works too. And I think I'm probably happy with what we have now for test running. It is more complicated than I wish it was. You know what, while we're on there, just let us add the verbosity flag too. We can also copy and paste that over from how we do it in Altisnips. Something like this. Basically, we put that here. We have a new argument. Verbose. And we don't need this. But we store true, that is correct. Print name of tests as they are executed. And then here our verbosity is args verbose, right? And the default is, of course, false. And now we should be able to run it like this and like this. And that didn't work. That didn't work. Verbosity is 0 if not args verbose, otherwise 3, maybe. Yeah, that's fine, right? Now we actually get the information which test is run, and we also get the print statements that we have in the tests, which is actually very nice. Okay, and I think I'll cut the stream here. Some public service announcement. Next week I'll be traveling, so there will not be a stream for the whole week. And also I would like to know if the stream is useful to you people, because I'm not sure if I want to continue it. So I will definitely finish the Python client on stream. I think we are nearly there anyways. We have wrapped basically everything that we ever want in the client already in the C API. I think the only thing that's missing is returning errors from RPCs. I think we didn't do that yet. And we only need a little more cleanup, and then we need to come up with a more high-level API for the Python people. So right now we're only testing the low-level API, but of course you cannot expect Python programmers to write this sort of code. They want to have a high-level interface. I would like to finish that definitely on stream. But after that, I'm not quite sure if I should continue, because coding on stream is much slower than actually coding not on stream. So to make rapid progress on Swiboe, it would be more useful to not be on stream. But if the stream is useful and keeps people interested in Swiboe, then the stream might also be useful. But I really have no signal, so I need from you people to tell me if you want the stream to continue or if you don't really care. Okay, I'll stick around till I pushed the changes, so if there are more questions, then oh, Hexpresso says stream is useful. Hexpresso, I never saw you in stream before. It's worth using the stream to advertise. Yeah, that's what I thought, but I'm really not sure. I never got any feedback on the stream so far. I know that roughly between 5 and 10 people are watching the stream on average, I would say. And I also see that people are watching the YouTube videos, but I'm not quite sure if it is really useful. If it's, for example, if it's possible to follow along, right? I have no idea. So just like write me, Twitter me, let me know if you like the stream, if I should continue doing it. Otherwise, I will consider. But nevertheless, like next week there is no stream. I will be traveling, so I have no access to internet. So For your follower base, 16, that's a great start. The general follower to viewer ratio is less than 10%, says Hexpresso. So it seems like Hexpresso is really, he knows about streaming. Okay, are there any questions to the code we wrote today? What code did we actually write today? We cleaned up the Python client, no, the Python testing. Actually, we didn't clean it up. We added command line flags to the Python testing. That's what we did, right? .6065 is writing in the Gitter client that the stream could be useful later if the project gets popular, and it would help new contributors to understand the internals. You know, I don't really buy that argument because the code changes very rapidly, and you would need to watch every single stream to really understand how it has evolved, I think. And so I don't really think it is a useful learning exercise for getting into the internals of Swiboe. But maybe it is, right? I don't know. I don't know of any project that has so much like metadata around it. So who knows? 6065, thanks for reviewing the client code, by the way. Really useful. Okay, so GitHub server Swiboe. Here we are. This is the commit we did today. I post that in the stream chat and in the Gitter chat too. And with that, I'm off. I'm around in the chat as usual for a while longer. If you have any more questions or comments, you can find me in our Gitter chat, which I can plug again here. Our gitter.im Swiboe/Swiboe. And of course also in the Twitch chat. Thanks so much for watching, and I talk to you people tomorrow. Bye.